Coming up.
I think sometimes people don't want to share the diagnosis because of fear and stigma.
Yeah.
The way I usually work with families, and I say, well, look, you walked into the GP surgery or the doctor's surgery and they told you what the diagnosis was. So what has changed from that time before you went into that GP surgery to come out? What it means is you have a long-term condition and you can manage that long-term condition with the help and support of other people around you, whether that's health and social care professionals or family.
Yeah.
Welcome to My Life with Dementia, a podcast from Dementia UK. I'm Kula Bikini. I'm here because in 2023, I lost my dad to vascular dementia. And now I want to help other families who are going through something similar. Admiral Nurses are specialist dementia nurses who give families the space to talk to someone who understands. No question is too big or small. In this episode, two Admiral Nurses, Hilda and Vic, are sharing their practical advice and insights on themes from Will and Ronnie's story. If you want to listen to Will and Ronnie's episode first, you'll find it right next to this one on your podcast feed. You'll hear Hilda and Vic explore things like why it can take longer to get a diagnosis for rarer forms of dementia, which types of dementia may benefit from medication, and the impact a dementia diagnosis can have on close relationships. If you'd like to speak to an Admiral Nurse, you can pause this episode at any time and follow the link in the show description to find out more.
Hello, my name is Vic Lyons. I'm an Admiral Nurse with Dementia UK.
And my name's Hilda Hayo, and I'm the Chief Admiral Nurse and CEO of Dementia UK. So in this recording, we're looking at the story of Will and Ronnie, and we're looking at how the effects of getting a young onset diagnosis can have on the person that's getting the diagnosis, but also the family members too.
And I think for Ronnie, there was that massive stigma about it as well, wasn't it? About the diagnosis and even talking to people about the fact that she was noticing these changes. So even kind of before she got the diagnosis, she knew there was something that wasn't quite right. Yeah. There were some changes that she couldn't quite put her finger on what they were, but didn't want to talk to her family about them even before that diagnosis. And then once she got the diagnosis, this massive fear almost of being treated differently, this stigma, this loss of independence. What do I tell work? How do I let my family know about this? How are friends going to react? So I think there was a lot there to unpack, as well as actually how she was given the diagnosis, what that actually was like.
So I'd like to come back to getting the diagnosis. This is a particular problem for people with rarer dementias or young onset dementia. Often people report they're going backwards and forwards to a GP. They know something's wrong, but the services are saying, oh no, it could be depression, it could be this, it could be something else. They're not fully aware of the presentation of somebody with young onset dementia. And that makes a big difference, because if they're not aware, it can often take 2 or 3 times longer to get a diagnosis for dementia than it does if you're over the age of 65, which is absolutely not okay.
It's hard, isn't it?
And then when a diagnosis is given, people are kind of functioning on very old information. So they're saying silly things like, oh, you've got 2 years to live, which is ridiculous.
Shocking,
absolutely
isn't it, that you would
ridiculous.
Get that information.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they focus on the things that are going wrong rather than having a strengths focus. Yeah. Certainly as part of a person working in a young onset team, it was always about the strengths focus. It's okay, you can't do X, Y, and Z, but we can get around that.
Yeah.
What do you like to do? What are your strengths? What can you still do? And then working with that family unit is so important.
Yeah. And it's one of those things that you get that real sense. And we know often that families tell us that they are left a bit alone after that diagnosis. But with this, it feels like really on your own. Actually, what support is it? Well, how do you get your affairs in order? What support is available? And actually, for me, importantly, where's the hope? Yes. Because if you get told you've got this diagnosis, and at the age that you're at there, at any age, it's hard. But if you're in your 50s, it's so much harder. Yeah. And actually, where's that hope? How do I live with this diagnosis without feeling this sense of devastation and hopelessness? Because, like you rightly said, there's so much you can do if you focus on the strengths. Have that conversation with somebody and say, yeah, this is your diagnosis. This is what you're living with, but this is how we're going to keep the hope intact.
Absolutely. So I think getting that diagnosis is important. And once you've got the accurate diagnosis, it's something that should be shared with your loved ones, your family, because if the family are aware there's some changes and they don't know why these changes are happening, that can actually disturb relationships anyway. So it's about knowing what's happening so you then can plan together about how you're going to best live your life.
And understand what's happening.
Exactly.
If we think about the fact that healthcare professionals often misattribute symptoms of changes and they think, oh, this is potentially depression that we're seeing, or this is the menopause, or this is something else that we're seeing. If the family don't know and they haven't got a name for it, they can start attributing to all sorts of things as well as the professionals can. And, you just say, oh, mum's just been moody or mum's been forgetful or whatever it is. But if you know, actually, this is the name, this is what we're dealing with, this is what's happening, you can suddenly start to get your house in order a little bit more, and it takes away any kind of blame. It's not mum being, not concentrating or being forgetful or, whatever it might be. Actually, this is something that's changed. This is something that mum's now living with.
And dementia is a long-term condition like any other long-term condition. And you adapt and you learn how to cope. And I think this is part and parcel of having the right diagnosis. So you've got a name for it. Yeah, you can go on to Dr. Google and have a look. Don't take everything you read on Dr. Google as being accurate because, to be frank, there's an awful lot of inaccuracies there. Go onto our website. Go onto Dementia UK website. Speak to our Admiral Nurses on the clinics or in the helpline, or speak to our specialist nurses for young onset dementia or children and young adults. We can give you the most up-to-date information.
Specialist support
and
advice.
Support. Exactly, specialist support. And that's the crucial thing, because bluntly, there is a lack of specialist support for people living with young onset dementia in most counties in the UK or areas of the UK. So you have to be able to find the sources that are reliable, are consistent, and are able to give you that support that you need.
Yeah.
Ronnie was talking about how one of her close friends ceased to really have meaningful contact with her after the diagnosis, which she found really quite hurtful. And unfortunately, that can happen quite frequently in life when anybody gets a long-term diagnosis, let alone dementia diagnosis.
And it's usually about people not quite knowing how to respond, isn't it? It's not quite being sure, how do I be with this person in this space? And it can be painful, it can be difficult. And I think sometimes some friends will go off because they can't deal with that, or it may even be a family member, not a friend, who goes, oh, I can't deal with that. And other people might surprise you because you think they're the friend who's least able to cope with it, and suddenly they're actually become a rock. They've become somebody
they're the one you go to.
Friendships can be really difficult, can't they,
Very
when
complex.
you're living with any long-term condition.
What I thought was wonderful was how Ronnie looked at things in a slightly different way. So how can I make a difference and stop this happening to somebody else? And her work that she's doing as the education and training of health and social care professionals, spot on, because it is so definitely needed. And people are more likely to listen to Ronnie because she's got the experience than they probably would be if they picked up a book or they picked up an article.
It's that real lived experience, that real reality, isn't it?
That.
I think one of the other things, obviously, Ronnie has got access to some medication that she started on. And again, not everybody is going to be offered medication for their dementia.
Yeah, the medication will be useful for people with Alzheimer's type, not the other forms of dementia. And I think sometimes people think you can take it if you've got vascular dementia or frontotemporal dementia, other sorts of dementias. It doesn't work effectively. You get the side effects with no good effects. It won't work for all people, as you quite rightly said. About 60% of people it will make some difference. The 40%, even though they've got Alzheimer's type,
it's just not going to make a difference. And it doesn't cure the dementia. So even if you're listening to this and you haven't got these medications that you've heard Ronnie talking about, they don't necessarily work as well for everybody. But it's not just that, it's the lifestyle changes. It's finding your purpose, finding things that you can do together as a family, and that gives them meaning and purpose.
And what I've found when working with lots of families is when people have got a sense of purpose, when they feel like they're kind of highlighting something or they're giving something back, you find that the dementia doesn't progress as fast as if they just sat back waiting to go, in effect. Anything that kind of keeps those brain cells ticking over is going to have
it's so
benefit.
positive, isn't it? And do you know, the other thing in Ronnie's story as well that I was kind of struck by is the fact that she was living with this diagnosis in secret. In lots of ways, she was keeping it from her family. She wasn't sort of sharing it. And she talks about this sort of holding this very privately and trying to protect her family. But then from that to then go to actually, I'm going to talk about it openly, I'm going to educate, I'm going to use my voice and my advocacy. It shows quite a shift. It shows quite strength and a massive like transition, really. And I that just kind of really surprised me in a way to sort of see how she'd gone from the starting point through to where she is now and the journey she's been on with her dementia.
And I think that's superb. I think sometimes people don't want to share the diagnosis, not just because they're trying to protect their children. It's also because of fear and stigma.
Yeah.
The way I usually work with families, and I say, well, look, you walked into the GP surgery or the doctor's surgery and they told you what the diagnosis was. So what has changed from that time you went before you went into that GP surgery to come out? It doesn't mean to say we're going to take your driving licence away or anything of that nature. What it means is you have a long-term condition and you can manage that long-term condition with the help and support of other people around you, whether that's health and social care professionals or family. Yeah. That's what the diagnosis means. Yeah. And I think so many people think the diagnosis is the end of their life. It is not.
It's not at all.
No,
if it's just a change, isn't it?
Exactly.
It's just moving on to the next stage of your life. It's a label. And actually, one of the things we talk all the time as Admiral Nurses is that the diagnosis isn't where it starts, because you've been living with dementia for however long before that. The diagnosis is just the point that you've got a name for what I've been dealing with, or the confirmation of a name that you probably thought it might have been all along anyway. You know, often if you're experiencing these changes, and Will talks about this, doesn't he? Actually, they was aware there was something going on. The friendships around you, the groups around you would have been aware, but perhaps worried about saying anything, scared about pointing anything out. I think there's still something where there's almost a slight stigma about the word dementia, where we don't want to name it, we don't want to say it, and if we don't say it, it somehow isn't true. That doesn't take it away. You know, there's just a word.
I've been in nursing for a long period of time, over 40 years, and I remember cancer having that same sort of thing where people didn't want to talk about it. Often the relatives would be told the diagnosis of the person. Should we tell the person that they've got cancer? I mean, it was a bizarre time. Nowadays, it's changed so significantly because we'll say, right, what sort of cancer is it? Where is it? What's its name? What can you do about it? We will be there eventually with dementia, but we're still a little way from that. And I think once we get to that point where there is some sort of cure or even a really good preventative, I think we might well get to where cancer is now, hopefully.
I think Will talks about how do you plan for your future. You know, he wants to sort of think about his independence, building a career, the future planning.
And he spoke a little bit about feelings of guilt of actually moving away and continuing. And in a way, that's probably why Ronnie didn't want to say things either, because she didn't want to interfere with his life.
Didn't want to halt him.
Yeah. I mean, he's found his way of coping with that. And I think Ronnie's been a big part of that, because Ronnie's getting on with her life and she's making a difference out there for people that are going to be living with young onset dementia for the future. But also Will's doing his bit because he's doing the running and he's doing the fundraising. So he's feeling like he's putting something back too, to make a difference, not just for his family, but for other people's families too.
I think that's the thing they've both done, isn't it? They've taken this diagnosis and rather than going, this is the end, like we were saying before, they've gone, okay, we've got this. How do we live with this? What does this mean for us as a family? How do we go forward with this? And, you know, what does Will want? What does Ronnie want? And actually what a celebration in a way. You know, they've got this diagnosis, but it's 100% not stopping them. They're living together with it and planning for the future.
If you'd like to speak to an Admiral nurse like Hilda or Vic yourself, you can contact Dementia UK's Helpline. Just click on the link in the show description or visit dementiauk.org. The Helpline is open every day of the year, except for the 25th of December. This has been an episode of My Life with Dementia, a podcast from Dementia UK. Please subscribe in your podcast app to get new episodes as soon as they come out. And if you've enjoyed this episode, why not share it with someone you think might find it useful? You can take a look at the show notes for a link to our support services, which include online resources, ways to contact Dementia UK Helpline, and information about Admiral Nurse clinics. Thank you so much for listening.